It's 3:30, and this is the time that we've noticed for discussion in our CEO selection process. I have to share with everyone before we start that at about 2:30, I discovered at home that our internet connection was not working. So I now am at the Des Moines Waterworks office in a conference room using their internet, but the last 45 minutes has been pretty hectic. So I just got set up. So if you'll bear with me a second, I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting. Michelle, do you want to take roll of the members of the board?
Yes. Joel Ashburner.
Present.
Andrea Bolton.
Present.
Sue Hubbard.
Present.
Graham Gillette.
Here.
And Diane, of course.
Yes. At our meeting last Tuesday, our regular scheduled board meeting, we had extensive discussions about the CEO selection process and whether or not we should continue at this time in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. At that meeting, it was decided that yes, we would continue with our CEO search and that we would schedule this public discussion to talk about qualifications of our CEO candidate and expectations that we would have for someone who holds this position, and that we would do that general discussion in a public forum to give the public and the staff a better understanding of the process and again, those expectations that we have as we move forward. So today we will be discussing, I intend to call on Colin Batesinger, who has led our search, for some discussion of this and the process he has gone through and some of the development of the ideal candidate section of the recruitment piece that he put together. After that, we'll have an open discussion by the members of the board of anything that they would like to say in their thought process as we go forward. Following that, I will open the meeting for any public comment. I'd like to, or clarifications or questions that people might have about this process or about our expectations. I do want to caution everyone, the board and the public who may be speaking or commenting, that we will not be talking about individual candidates at this time. We're talking about the process and we're talking about the CEO position, but not talking about specific individuals. Following that discussion, we will close. We intend to close the meeting to discuss individual applicants. We, the board, will leave the public meeting and sign into another closed meeting where we will discuss individual applicants. Following this activity, we'll return to open session and announce any action that we may have taken during the closed meetings. So with this, do we have any questions about that and what we intend to do before we go forward? All right, Colin, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you'd take us through the timeline, the process that you followed in your development of the ideal candidate profile that you put together.
Okay, well, first of all, Colin Benziger and Associates, and I'm pleased to be here once again with you all. We started our search on January 14th, and it included initially meetings with the union president, with the senior staff of the utility, The senior management team is what it's described as. We met with the public affairs officers, and we met with each of the board members at the time. Of course, Joel wasn't on the board at that point. So we met with Dave Carlson. After meeting with you all, I sat down and wrote a recruitment profile. I attempted to integrate everyone's comments into the profile and came up with what basically described Des Moines, described the opportunity, and then it described the ideal candidate. The ideal candidate is where, I integrated what all of you thought would be the perfect person, to create a profile of the perfect person. That included input, again, from the senior staff, from the union, and all the board members. Once we had that completed, we sent it out for comments. We then posted it. We advertised it beginning roughly January 31st. It was out until February 28th. We looked at the candidates. At that point, we had 93 applicants. We looked at 9 to review further. Of those 9, we picked 6 that we thought were really a good fit. I wasn't really comfortable with just 6 candidates, so we reposted the job opening towards the end of the first week in March. We left it open for 2 more weeks until March 20th. We had another 29 applicants apply. 5 were selected for further consideration, and then 2 of those 5 we actually did the background work and presented to the board. Now the board, I'm going to go back to the ideal candidate section in a minute. The board actually received the materials for, I think, the first 6 candidates roughly around March 24th, and then since we closed on March 20th and the second time, it took a little while to get the materials together for the other 2 candidates that we presented, and I believe that arrived in early April, around the 5th or something like that. And then since then, we've kind of had a meeting or 2. We've let people look at the candidates, and here we are. Now, in terms of what your ideal candidate was, the way I described it, and I don't know whether we're going to be able to put it up on the screen or not. Yeah, it looks like it's getting there. We were looking for a seasoned professional who's both an outstanding manager and leader, someone with a track record of success and accomplishment, somebody who will partner with the board to guide the waterworks to a brighter future. While recognizing the board makes the policy decisions, the individual will not be afraid to comment if he or she feels strongly on an issue, either that could be either favorably or unfavorably, and to do so diplomatically, of course, and in the right setting. We felt that the person should be adept in intergovernmental relations. With your regionalism issue, we felt it was absolutely critical that somebody could work with other governments and with media relations as well. The idea was to create partnerships to achieve what the utility and the city, but also the region wanted to achieve. We thought that outstanding communication and interpersonal skills would be critical. The ability to, I'm in the second paragraph now, to build collaborative relationships and consensus and teams, to establish a vision, help the board establish a vision that everybody could buy into, the city of Des Moines, the wholesale customers, the staff, the public, and in reality, the region as well. Strong financial skills and negotiation skills we deemed were important. Now, when I say we, I'm talking about the board and the senior management team and the union. Mastery of technical details, engineering, operational, financial will be important or critical. The next paragraph, third paragraph, excellent public relations skills. The fourth paragraph, achievement-oriented, a doer, and a problem solver with a strategic focus. Someone who can look over the horizon, so to speak, to envision the consequences of proposed actions and position the utility in a way it can take advantage of the opportunities while avoiding issues. Someone who listens to others and respects their opinions. Someone who's a little bit impatient with bureaucracy is the way I would describe it. Someone who's got a little bit of a bias towards action. Someone who's flexible and creative, in the paragraph starting with the CEO right now. Someone with high but realistic expectations and who's supportive. Someone who's not going to micromanage, but somebody who will expect to be kept informed and believe strongly in accountability. Next paragraph, somebody who will mentor, helping staff members grow and improve themselves. Fostering the current positive environment where morale is high and union relations are excellent will be important. Having a sense of fairness and a sense of humor. Going down to the next paragraph, much of which, someone who's technologically savvy and who can appreciate what can be done to improve operations. And then there's the last paragraph where we talk about what the ideal candidate will have in terms of specific credentials, progressive management experience, at least 5 and 10 years of progressive management experience, at least 5 at the executive management level, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in business administration, engineering, or a related field, although 2 years of additional experience may be substituted for a master's degree. A PE is a plus, but not a requirement. And then we said ideally we'd like somebody who would stay with the utility for a very long time. And that was our ideal candidate section. Any questions? I think, Diane, you're muted.
I was just going to say, are there any questions for Colin? Understanding that he put this together after discussions with a number of people, including board members, senior staff, and union representatives. Any questions? So I think we're ready to open the floor for additional comments by the board on setting expectations, qualifications for our next CEO. And I guess I'll take this opportunity to start. I'll exercise my chair prerogative. I was with the Iowa Utilities Board and have been worked in this area for 35 years. I've seen a lot of CEOs in the public utility arena. And what's always been important to me in this area is that there's a public interest component to public utilities. I think water, being an essential service, is probably that you ingest is probably the greatest of all the utilities. And I think this community has a better understanding than most because of the 93 flood of the importance of water and clean water, potable water to the community. So for me, I'm always interested in that public interest component because this person needs to be more than a manager and more than an operator. They have to understand that they have a responsibility to an entire community in, again, delivery of an essential service. One thing that wasn't in there that I don't think was in there that is important to me is that we continue the work that was started by the board and by Bill Stowe in environmental awareness and making the community aware of the importance of clean water and the impact of different practices on our water, and that we continue to promote that environmental awareness. So with that, I'll wrap up my remarks and open it to the floor.
I'll jump on that, Diane, with your last comment about the environmental awareness. And I think that's one thing that's important to me. You know, a lot of the words we use today are the buzzwords. And I know that visionary is a buzzword, but when I think about this position, I want to have somebody there that's going to think beyond all the challenges that we are currently seeing and dealing with as a traditional operation of a water utility would, but also be able to identify what's coming down the road and what can we be first in the nation on. What opportunities are there out there that we can be a leader on and in the forefront and bring them back to us, whether it be in the environmental field or in new technology fields, and kind of push us forward. And I think that's an important piece of all of this. Also thinking about the legacy of Bill and what our current relationships, I think that piece of relationships with our staff and labor force is key to this role as well, and making sure that we have somebody who has a good track record of being able to work with their staff and be that mentor and encourager. And I'll let somebody else go from there.
Diane, I'll just add, and it was certainly in the information that Colin added, we're in a real unique time for many reasons, but I think our regionalization discussions, I mean, this community is not going to be interested in doing this in another 10 years. And so when I see Christina Murphy and Jody Smith and Mayor Lorenz and Vern Willie all on this call, I'm pleased that they have an interest in this selection that we are about to go through, and I look forward to hearing from them as well. So I think Colin did a great job in summarizing all the things that at least I shared, and I think the other board members shared. And I want to thank all of you for being here. And Jody, it's really nice to have you on the line. It's been forever, I feel like, since we'd have our meetings at Palmer's. So welcome back.
Good to be back.
I'll add a few comments as well. Some of these might be duplicative of Colin's comments and what the board has said they're looking for in a candidate, but because I'm relatively new to this process, I just want to share a few of my thoughts. I'd say maybe the primary skill I'm looking for in a candidate is strong communication skills, the ability to, we're dealing with a lot of complex issues, particularly with regional cooperation, and the ability to distill and convey complex information is important, and the ability to communicate with the public, staff, the board, customers and regional partners, and union representatives. You know, all those different facets is important. Also executive experience, and particularly reporting to a board. I think we may see some candidates who have been a department manager or something like that, reporting to, you know, a city administrator or county administrator. I think that's of a different nature than an executive of Waterworks who has to report to a board, and I think that experience is valuable. Third, someone who's conservation minded or environmentally conscious. In fact, one thing in the ideal candidate summary we have here that I would flip is that we say a mastery of technical details is critical, and being environmentally conscious is a plus. I would flip those. I think this person has to be environmentally conscious, and hopefully they have the kind of technical engineering operations experience. I think that's a plus, but we'll have a COO who heads up that aspect. So, and then fourth, the political skill, the ability to build consensus and navigate complex political issues, especially as we work towards more regional cooperation, I think is a critical skill to have here. So just a few thoughts. Obviously, there's a lot of skills and aspects of a COO that we're looking for, but I want to share a few thoughts.
Other comments?
You taking comments from the public yet, or?
No, we're still with the board. We'll take that in a minute.
I'd like to, if it's appropriate, Diane, I'd like to hear the other comments before I chime in. Okay.
All right. We will then open this up to public comment. And remember, we are not talking about individuals. We are talking about what we're looking for and an ideal candidate and maybe some advice on things that we should take into consideration as we look at the applicants that we have.
I would make a comment if it's all right. First of all, I'd like to say you've picked a excellent consultant in Colin. As mayor, we worked with Colin extensively on our search for David Jones, our city manager, and we're extremely happy with the process that he led us through and the results that we got from that. And going forward from that, I guess, I think Diane hit the nail right on the head in describing this process when she talked about the public interest component of what you're looking for. And all of us that are in the public service arena, to whatever degree we are, that's all we really do is the public interest. What is the public interest to what we're doing? And I know nothing about any of the other candidates that you guys have looked at because I haven't seen that information. But you've described in your work with Colin, I think you've come up with all of the descriptive factors that anyone would be looking for in this type of position. But I think from my point of view, that person needs to understand all of the issues. I mean, I'm sure all of those people, 6 or however many it was you had there, are qualified or they wouldn't be on that short list. So they understand the broad issue of producing water for a given region. But I think this particular region in this particular time has a scenario that really needs to be understood in order to be successful in it. And an understanding of not only running the utility, which, and this is probably a naive perspective, but I'm assuming is fairly generic. I mean, there can't be a whole lot of difference from one to the other, but the customer base that they have and the user base that they have, I think is critical in this situation. And I just encourage you to take those thoughts into consideration when you deliberate this.
Thank you. Other comments?
Once I get the right button figured out, this is Vern. Hey, I'd kind of like to jump on with Gary as far as that goes. We are there's a lot to running it, and right now you're running it, and I'm sure Ted's doing a fine job with what he's doing there. So, I mean, running the utility is going to be a little different than the whole public thing, and again, the regionalization. So I think that the candidate really needs to have, maybe they don't have experience in that, and maybe they do. Maybe you've got some that have come from that background, and like you have with other utilities where you've worked on things like that. But I think that's very important. to be a good public speaker. Bill liked to be out in the public and make everybody aware of what was going on.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Diane. This is Ross Grooters. I serve on Pleasant Hill City Council with Mark Conrad, who's also on the call. We're total service customers of Des Moines Waterworks, about 10,000 people here on Des Moines East Side, and just kind of wanted to take an opportunity to say that I hope that when this decision is being looked at, that the total service customers like our members are being kept in mind and what our interests are too. And I appreciated the eye toward water quality. I think the number one mission of Des Moines Waterworks is surface water treatment. And so I appreciated some of Joel's comments and Andrea's and yours and others. So thank you for those. And yeah, please keep your total service customers in mind.
Go ahead. If someone's speaking, check and make sure that you're not muted. Because I'm not hearing anything. Is anyone else?
No, I'm not either, Diane.
Anyone else? Oh, Christina.
Yeah, Diane, this is Christina Murphy, West Des Moines Waterworks. And I think, you know, for us, the most important thing is that the process continues to move forward. You know, that there is some desire to have some certainty in the leadership of Des Moines Waterworks as we continue to have these discussions, and knowing what that direction will be. And I do appreciate, I think, as a purchase capacity customer, we know transparency is very important to us and good communication skills with all of those customers, I think, are important to those communities. And hopefully you find a candidate that has those qualities. I think you spoke a lot to a lot of other qualities that will be important for this position.
Thanks. Now, is someone else trying to speak? So like I said, make sure that if you're going to speak that you are not muted. It's on the lower left-hand corner. There's a little microphone that has the word mute underneath it. If it has a line through it, then if you want to speak, we can't hear you.
And I'll just go ahead and speak. And if somebody else from the public wants to chime in, I'll cede the floor. But I appreciate those comments that have been made. I mean, I think it's important that Des Moines Waterworks has a leader that is kind of the whole package, right? I mean, we're looking for somebody that understands and has the ability, I guess, to look out into the future. And that has more to do, you know, it's important to run the day-to-day operations at Des Moines Waterworks. But one of the things I'm most proud of as a board member is we have such a talented staff today that is capable of running the utility. And those folks have been tested and put to the ultimate test in this crisis. It is clear that our day-to-day activities, from the newest person to the most senior member of our team, they're well trained and well positioned to handle the job. And obviously that has to continue. And it's up to the new leader to make sure that we don't lose any ground on that front. But it's equally as important that the leader be able to look out into the future and build the type of business and community. And I think, Diane, you said that public service component of what we do. And so we're asking for everything. We're looking for somebody with all the tools. And that's what, as we evaluate candidates, I think we need to make sure they check as many of these boxes that we can have them check. And for those that they can't check, how do we compensate for that as a utility?
Thank you, Graham. Now, I'll try this again. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Would it have any of these comments generated response or more comments from the board members? Okay, if not, then I think that we will close out this portion of the public meeting. Could I have a motion about going into closed session to discuss individual candidates?
Diane, I'll make that motion. It's rather lengthy because there's a number of legal things we need to cover, so please bear with me. The proposed motion for closed session to discuss the CEO candidate. It is hereby moved that the board conduct a closed session to discuss CEO and general manager selection based on the following. 1, the board finds that under Iowa Code 388.9, the governing body of a city utility can hold a closed session to discuss proprietary information if the utility's competitive position would be harmed by public disclosure not required of potential or actual competitors, and if no public purpose would be served by such disclosure. And number 2, the board finds discussion of the selection process of potential candidates to fill the CEO and general manager position is proprietary information. Des Moines Waterworks is competing nationally for CEO talent, and public disclosure of the selection process would not be required of private water utilities and other competitors. And 3, the board finds that disclosure of the board's process and candidates at this time will serve no public purpose and will harm Des Moines Waterworks' competitive position, and a closed session is warranted for this reason. And number 4, the board further finds that all but 2 candidates requested confidential consideration of their qualifications for interview, and all but 2 candidates requested confidential interviews pursuant to Iowa Code 21.5, 1I, because discussion of their qualifications in closed session may be necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to the candidate's reputation, and that a closed session is warranted for this reason. And finally, number 5, the board further finds that Iowa Code Section 21.9 exempts strategy discussions concerning certain terms of employment of its potential CEO from the requirements of Iowa Code Chapter 21. And we really should have had our new attorney, Joel Ashbrenner, just graduating from Drake, read that. But
I
that is
still
my
have 2 finals to take, so.
yeah. So I move that motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Before we vote, I've got a question and a comment, if I may, Diane.
Sure.
First of all, when we come out of the closed session, at this point, we don't expect to take any action today. Is that correct? Or do we?
I don't think so, but I think the law requires that when we come out, we need to announce that we've
taken action.
If we've taken any action.
But okay, so I'm just trying to think of the action. So if we had a closed session and we decided we were going to interview so many candidates. That doesn't take a public vote, does it?
I don't think so. Rick, you're on the line, correct?
Yes, I'm on the line. I think if the board wanted to take an action, it would do so only in open session. If the board desired not to take any kind of action, then nothing need be done in the open session.
But I think the question is, if we decided that we were going to interview 3 applicants, would that be an action that we would need to take in open session?
I think that would be an action only if the board was deciding to exclude all the other candidates at this time.
Okay.
Okay, that answers, I think that answers my question, or at least something to discuss. And my comment is this: I want to explain. I'm going to vote no to go into this closed session, and I'm going to vote no based on the comments I made last week. And that is, I think it's inappropriate for us at this time to proceed with this search. And I think my rationale behind that, at a time when deaths from COVID-19 continued to increase, the number of cases continue to increase, not only in Iowa but nationally, the future is very unstable, not only for this country and the state, but for Des Moines Waterworks in particular. And so my recommendation last week was to suspend this search until a later date. Obviously that didn't happen, but that explains why I'm going to go vote no to go further with this process by going to the closed session.
Thank you. Michelle, would you take a roll call vote?
Joel Ashburner,
Yes.
Andrea Bolton,
Yeah. Yes.
Sue Huppert,
Yes.
Graham Gillette,
No.
Diane Munns.
Yes. So for those of you on the line, I think we leave this meeting open. You're welcome to stay, but and we will return at the end of the closed session. I want to thank everyone for coming today, and please be safe and be well.
And it's important that all of us going to the closed session leave this session, I believe. I don't think both things will work at the same time, but you don't want to accidentally leave this open.
Correct. Be sure to leave the Zoom meeting, please.
Thank you.
Hey, Diane.
Yes?
And it's Vern. I'm assuming that if you do take any action, then Laura will be sending out some minutes of that anyway, so we wouldn't have to stay on the line.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Michelle,
Yes.
are we ready to proceed?
I am recording again. Do you want me to make sure all the board members are here?
Would you?
Yes. Joel Ashburner,
Here.
Andrea Bolton,
Here.
Sue Hubbard,
Here.
Graham Gillette,
Here.
and Diane Moines.
Here. We are re-entering the public session after being in closed session to discuss individual applicants. In that session, we have agreed to proceed to interview, which I don't think requires any kind of action on our part. So with that, is there any other business that we need to undertake today? Hearing none,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Stay safe.
You too.